As Lebanon grapples with deepening humanitarian crisis, the visit of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, arrives at a crucial juncture. This marks the second visit by a UN's top human rights official since 2002, with hopes for impactful reforms amid the ongoing political and economic turmoil. Turk's presence underscores the UN's genuine concern regarding Israeli human rights violations in Lebanon. I'm Hani Saif, and this is Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Al-Ahram Online has reported that Lebanon has entered a new political era, with the election of General Joseph Aoun as president, ending a two-year vacancy. Aoun, a centrist military leader, is seen as a compromise candidate capable of uniting rival factions. His election follows intense political negotiations, supported by both Hezbollah and rival groups, and aims to restore Lebanon's governance. Aoun has pledged significant reforms, including judicial independence, anti-corruption measures, and economic revival. However, his ability to enact change will depend on building a parliamentary bloc supportive of his vision, as political factions remain entrenched in Lebanon's complex system. The appointment of Nawaf Salem as the Prime Minister signals further progress, with a focus on reform and international support. Lebanon's relationship with Syria will be key to addressing regional concerns, including border security, smuggling, and the repatriation of Syrian refugees, marking a new chapter in Lebanese-Syrian relations. The Israeli occupation forces blew up houses and bulldozed roads in Ait al-Shab, Hanin, and Marun al-Ras in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese National News Agency reported that the occupation forces carried out a bombing operation in the town of Merkaba in the Marjion district. Israeli violations continue in Lebanese territory, leaving a number of injuries, despite the ceasefire agreement between the two sides. On November 27th, the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hezbollah, sponsored by the United States and France, came into effect. Prime Minister-designate Nawaf Salem has launched non-binding consultations with Lebanon's parliamentary blocs. These consultations are part of the government formation process. Salem has met with the Change Coalition and Democratic Gathering parliamentary blocs and is resuming consultations with the Kataib bloc. And to provide more analysis about the most recent updates concerning the current situation in Lebanon, we're joined from Cairo by Dr. Ahmed Yunus, an academic researcher and political analyst, and Mr. Ahmed Said Ahmed, the international relations expert. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here. Now, Dr. Yunus, first off, how do you view the significance of Volker Turk's visit to Lebanon amidst the country's ongoing humanitarian challenges on account of Israel's latest war on Lebanon?
First of all, good evening, and for you and for your audience. With respect to Turkey's visit to Lebanon, I think it is highly significant, especially given the country's severe political instability and economic crisis. So his visit underscores the UN's commitment to addressing human rights violation and promoting stability. His engagement with Lebanese officials and civil society highlights the international community's concern and importance of upholding international humanitarian law. So, comparing with the previous visit, this trip is even more critical as Lebanon faces a political, now, as we know, a complicated political situation and economic collapse. So, I think this presence could be a signal for the need for more international efforts to support Lebanon in overcoming these crises.
Mr. Said, now, what tangible impacts can the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights visit have on Lebanon's humanitarian situation, especially regarding the refugees, the displaced, and the vulnerable populations displaced by the war?
In fact, the visit of the Humanitarian Commissioner of the United Nations to Lebanon is highly important in light of the humanitarian situations as well as the economic that is in heart. And because of more than 1 million Lebanese fled and immigrated from their territories, particularly in the southern and the southern outskirts, and their return would require great monies and the reconstruction as the occupying forces demolished all the villages and the infrastructure that became it very hard to make the life applicable in these areas, such as the hospitals and the housing, that require a great amount of monies. And I think that the UN Commissioner's role will be very much important in highlighting the size and of the humanitarian crisis in Lebanon, as well as working in mobilizing the international community, international organization, and different countries for the assistance of reconstruction Lebanon through an international conference and to identify the size of the great challenges that Lebanon is suffering, that all used to suffer the economic problems such as these deposits and the Lebanese currency. And the war had affected negatively in Lebanon. Therefore, it is important for the visitor to provide urgent assistance for the refugees in their places. And another step is to reunite these people following the reconstruction after the demolished villages in light of the massive destruction made by the occupying territories in the the occupying forces in the southern territories.
Dr. Yunus, you've mentioned the election of the Lebanese president. Now, how might General Joseph Aoun's presidency play and shape Lebanon's reform agenda?
General Joseph Aoun elections as president represent a turning point for Lebanon, especially in terms of human rights and reform. His leadership comes at a time when the country desperately needs stability and trust in its institutions. His focus on judicial independence and anti-corruption measures signals a commitment to restoring the rule of law, which has been a major demand of the Lebanese people. we see that General On promised to consolidate state authority over arms, ensuring the army remains the sole defender of national security. It reflects a strategic, I think, move towards strengthening sovereignty and mitigating external and internal pressures. I think his approach to administrative reforms, emphasizing I think we can say that meritocracy over sectarianism. So it is pave the way for a more efficient and transparent public sector. I think implementing these reforms will not be without challenges. Lebanon, as we have seen, the political divisions and external influences will test his ability to deliver. So the international community and local stakeholders will be closely watching whether On can translate his promises into actions, policies, or we have to see if everything is easy. So his presidency could redefine Lebanon's trajectory if he successfully balances reform with the delicate political realities on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Said, you've highlighted the importance and the significance of the visit, but can Volker Turk play a role in holding Israel accountable of its destruction of the Lebanese villages and cultural sites, as well as other human rights violations?
In fact, Volker may play a very important role in exposing the Israeli crimes and destructions of the places and war crimes in Lebanon. That would contribute in held Israel before the International Court of Justice along with ICC. Volker in return would be able to pressure Israel to hold the responsibilities, its responsibility and the compensation as well as the destructions in Lebanon, as Israel demolished the Gaza Strip in addition to Lebanon in several crimes, and they are basically, according to the international law, it held responsible for the crimes, and once again the responsibility of the reconstruction and the compensation for those who were affected by this act, particularly the civilians. They have nothing to do with the factions such as Hezbollah and Hamas. Even though their homes, farms were demolished and destructed, that would require a real and effective international movement, in particularly in Security Council, to combine Israel with this compensation and the affected civilians. This visit is very important as it highlights the size of the Lebanese crisis and the destruction, and expose Israel's deeds of war crimes, and would assist in mobilizing the international community into the reconstruction and the process of held those perpetrators before the international court.
Dr. Yunus, Mr. Said, please stay with us. We will continue our discussion, but for now, let's find out more on the ongoing developments taking place there, and we'll be right back.
Lebanon, a nation under immense strain, is experiencing one of its most challenging humanitarian crises in recent history. Amid a complex political and economic landscape, The recent visit of Volker Turk, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, represents a significant moment in Lebanon's human rights journey. This visit marks his second to Lebanon, the first occurring in 2002, and underscores the high intention of the international community toward Lebanon's human rights conditions, particularly in the wake of the new political leadership and the efforts for economic reform. Volker Turk's presence is a critical step toward assessing Lebanon's human rights landscape and the progress it has made in the midst of ongoing challenges. With the appointment of Nawaf Salem as the new Prime Minister, there is a renewed opportunity to address Lebanon's internal reforms, particularly concerning labor rights, refugee protection, and judicial independence. The visit aligns with Lebanon's political transition, and Turk's focus will be on ensuring that these changes translate into concrete improvements in human rights protections for vulnerable populations, including Syrian refugees and migrant workers. Furthermore, the visit comes at a time when Israel's violations in the region have contributed to instability. The High Commissioner's advocacy for Lebanon is expected to include strong calls for ending such hostilities and ensuring the safety of Lebanese citizens, particularly those along the southern border. His press conference on January 16th is anticipated to outline actionable recommendations for Lebanon's future, urging both national leadership and the international community to prioritize human rights and uphold international law. Ultimately, Volker Turk's visit serves as a pivotal opportunity for Lebanon to solidify its commitment to human rights in the face of daunting challenges. With international support and internal political reform, Lebanon can work toward a more stable and just future.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Yunus, my question goes to you now. You spoke about the appointment of President Joseph Aoun, but what about the appointment of Nawaf Salem as the Prime Minister? How realistic are the hopes for economic reforms now in Lebanon under his government?
We have seen in his speech, Nawaf Salam's speech, about he is believing in inclusivity and in unity, and he is opposing to exclusivity. And he says that we extend our hands for all the Lebanese people. So I think that if there is a genuine cooperation between all the parliamentary blocs, Lebanon could have a better chance at implementing meaningful reforms. While the country's sectarian divisions have historical hinder progress, collaborative efforts could pave the way for shared priorities, especially in human rights and governance. So if the political leaders come together to prioritize the national interest over sectarian concerns, so I think it could lead to key reforms such as judicial independence, anti-corruption measures, and with external support and commitment to overcoming international divisions, there is a potential for positive change, though it will require sustained cooperation and political will.
Mm-hmm. We will shed more light on that later on, but Mr. Said, now given the latest Israeli aggression, how critical is it for Lebanon to secure international support sovereignty?
I think Lebanon today is facing a very serious economic political challenges and challenges inherited from Joseph, the President Joseph Aoun inheritance, as well as the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam, related to how to reform the institutions to achieve the national independence, following that Lebanon was subject to the foreign interventions, such as Iranian and international interventions. Now Lebanon is in the way to reinstate its independence in light of its opinions before the Arab world, which is very important in supporting Lebanon. And therefore, there are great challenges before the Prime Minister as well as the President in tackling the economic situations and the crisis of deposit. More than 80 million US dollar, as well as the collapse of the currency, the international loan debts, and the reconstruction and the continuation of occupations by Israelis in the Lebanese territories, and executed the resolution 1701 resolution, and to strengthen the Lebanese army to be disseminated in the southern and arming the militias. All these real challenges before the Lebanon, and I think an Arab role as well as international role should be played in supporting the independence of Lebanon and practicing pressure against Israel to withdraw from Lebanon and execute Resolution 1701. And I think that following choosing the President Aoun as well as the Prime Minister Salam, Lebanon is before a very important support internationally and regionally in light of the great and huge challenges that Lebanon as well as the Lebanese people are facing.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Yunus, you mentioned the Lebanese factions. Now, how do Lebanon's internal divisions affect the country's ability to implement meaningful reforms in terms of governance?
Lebanon internal divisions deeply rooted in its sectarian political system. It have been a significant obstacle to implementing meaningful reforms. I think that the country's unique power sharing structure designed to balance representation among its various religious communities. So I think it has instead international what we can say is sectarianism as the primary driver of political decision making. So political leaders often prioritize their sectarian constitutions over the broader national interest. I think that this fragmented political landscape creates a persistent state of gridlock. So where major decisions, for example, and reforms are stalled due to conflicting interests among the sectarian factions. There are many attempts to address critical issues such as human rights violations, economic mismanagement, and governance are frequently met with resistance as reforms often threaten the privilege of the ruling elites. So the consequences of this political are profound. So I think the Lebanese system, with its all corruption and weakness, I think it should trust in the new government, in the new chapter in Lebanese life. And I think that
Yes.
accountability that should be taken place, and يعني, as I have said, that key reforms needed to tackle Lebanon's pressing
Hopefully so.
challenges.
Yes, well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Ahmed Yunus, the academic researcher and political analyst, and Mr. Ahmed Said Ahmed, the international relations expert. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on tonight's show. And hopefully a new president and a new prime minister will bring more progress and more unity in Lebanon. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of Think Tank. I'm Henny Saif. Thank you for joining us.